Hey everybody, in today's video, I'm going to explain why I think Sgt. Pepper by the Beatles in mono is a lot better than Sgt. Pepper in stereo. Now, I think in some of my previous videos when I've talked about Sgt. Pepper, I've always talked about how I really like the stereo mix of Sgt. Pepper, and I do. I don't want to get that confused. I really do like the stereo mix. It's the mix that I grew up with. It's when I think of Sgt. Pepper, in my brain and I replay the songs, it's the original 1967 stereo mix of Sgt. Pepper is the version that is forever ingrained in my brain. That being said, I do believe that the proper way that the Beatles wanted everyone to hear Sgt. Pepper is the mono version. And I started thinking about this and thinking about all the reasons why is the mono better. And I put together a list of the reasons that I think justify why the mono version of Sgt. Pepper is the best version of Pepper to listen to. And as I said, I made a list. Here it is. And I'm going to go over some of these, what I think are the important reasons why Sgt. Pepper in mono is the proper way to listen to it. Now, the two copies I have right here, the two pressings I have right here, this is the 2014 mono remaster, which I think sounds amazing. If you can get your hands on this, this is probably the best way to listen to Sgt. Pepper mono on vinyl. And as far as getting a really clean copy, a pristine copy, and of course, if you could hunt down an original UK pressing, a mono pressing, then that would be great too. But those are pretty pricey, and finding a really clean one can be a bit tricky. So the next best thing are these 2014 mono remaster pressings. And these are also getting really hard to come by, but you can still find these every once in a while. So if you got one of these, consider yourself lucky. This other pressing I have, this is a stereo pressing of Sgt. Pepper. This happens to be a early 70s, mid 70s. This is a Harry T. Moss pressing, UK stereo pressing. And so these are the two I'll be holding up. So this is the stereo pressing, this is the mono pressing, and I'll try to tell you which one is which, because they're kind of hard to differentiate. So first off, the number one reason why I think the mono Sgt. Pepper is the better version than the stereo is because this is exactly 100% how the Beatles wanted the album to sound. They were there for probably every single mixing session, certainly for all of the recording sessions, and this is exactly how they wanted the album to sound, meaning all the effects, all the levels of the instruments in the mix, and the sequencing of the album, everything from the very start to the very, very end. This is exactly how the band wanted the album to sound. So that is obviously incredibly important. I think that is the most important thing going for the mono mix. And the mono mix is really, really different than the stereo mix. And there's a lot of really cool things going on in the mono mix that are not happening in the stereo mix. And some of those things I've written down. The effects. So there are many effects that on the mono mix are really prominent, but on the stereo mix are not so much. For example, like on Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, the effects on that are really, really cool, super psychedelic on the mono mix. On the stereo mix, they're not as psychedelic. They're still there, but they're not quite as just over the top. And Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is arguably one of the most famous psychedelic 60s rock songs of all time. So you kind of want to have, at least I do, I want it to be as psychedelic as possible. And that really comes through on the mono mix. Another song that really benefits from the mono mix, in my opinion, with the effects is Good Morning, Good Morning. First of all, it's way more punchy. It's way more of a rock song in your face on the mono mix. And the guitar solo with the mono mix is amazing. It's been treated with, it's got like a warbly effect going on. I think they used the very speed thing they had at EMI where they could like adjust the tape speed while it was going, so it has like a kind of like a warbly sound going to it, and it's just completely over the top. By the way, Paul is playing the guitar solo on Good Morning, Good Morning. And I just really like it on the mono mix. On the stereo mix, it's still fantastic and it sounds great, but it's not the effect isn't as prevalent on it, and it falls a little flat. Also on the stereo mix, the way it's been panned, it doesn't have quite as much of an impact with the drums and the bass and the guitar all just rocking together like they are on the mono mix. So again, the mono mix for those two songs, as far as the effects go, it really benefits them. And there are other instances, of course, on the album as well. But those are just two of the most, I would say, the most obvious examples of the effects being way more prominent on the mono mix and the stereo. The other thing, like I mentioned earlier with Good Morning, is so many more of these songs have an impact, a stronger rock impact on the mono mix. And those are like Getting Better, the title track, Sgt. Pepper, the opening and the reprise, Good Morning, Good Morning, Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite. They just pack a punch on the mono mix that the stereo mix is a little bit lacking. And it's just the way of the times, where in 1967 when they made a stereo mix, it was much harder to make a stereo mix because they only had 4 tracks to work with, and a lot of the tracks were locked in to each other on certain tracks, so you couldn't really pan them apart. So a lot of times on the stereo mix, sometimes the drums are way over to the side and the bass might be on the opposite side. And with the mono mix, of course, you get the bass and drums together, and it just packs more of a punch, which makes a lot of these songs just come across, I think, in a much better way. The other thing about the mono mix that is, I think, really important is you get a lot of extra vocals. Now, of course, if you are thinking about the mono mix as the definitive mix, then really the extra vocals would really just be make the stereo mix lacking these vocals. But we'll call them extra vocals from now on. And some of those are, like in Fixing the Hole during the fade out, you hear Paul does kind of like a riff going off a little bit, and it's very cool. Also on Sgt. Pepper Reprise, there are vocals at the very intro of that. You hear them like kind of whispering about something, and then at the very end, again, Paul goes off again and says like, "Thank you very much," blah blah blah, something like that. And just extra little vocal bits that, while they're not all that important, they're very cool, and to me, they make the songs have a lot more energy, especially those two songs, Fixing the Hole and Sgt. Pepper Reprise. So those extra vocals are very important, and you can only find them in the mono mix. So, like I said, the mono mix, it's just so much better. And the next thing I want to mention, and this is a very big one, the song She's Leaving Home. So She's Leaving Home, the mono mix, it plays at a faster speed. So it's in a higher key, and of course it's not the original key that the Beatles recorded the song in or wrote the song in, but it is how they wanted it to be presented. On the stereo mix, it plays at a slower speed, and I really, over time, have learned to prefer the faster version, is what we'll call it, or the mono mix. It just seems to flow better to me. And again, this is probably just the number one topic of this video is, this is how the Beatles wanted the song to be heard. This is exactly how they wanted it to be heard. And most likely with the stereo mix, it was just the Beatles weren't there when the stereo mix was being made. That's another thing I should say. When the stereo mix was being made, George Martin and Jeff Emmerich made the stereo mix in a very short amount of time. I think they only took maybe a day or something, maybe 2 days at the most, to make the stereo mix for the Sgt. Pepper tracks. So they probably, by mistake, just didn't have the tape speed going fast like on the mono mix for She's Leaving Home, and that's why it's slower on the stereo mix. So it's very important to note that this is how the Beatles wanted you to hear Sgt. Pepper, and I really do believe that it is a better way to listen to it. Every time I listen to the mono mix, I'm always just so impressed at how, just what an amazing, amazing masterpiece this is, considering what the Beatles had to use to record it. And when I say the Beatles, I'm including George Martin and Jeff Emerick and the whole production team. The fact that they only had a 4-track recording machine and made this, it's mind-blowing. And I think that the mono mix of this album really conveys that even more so than the stereo mix. And like I said, the stereo mix is not bad at all. In fact, it's wonderful, and I love it. And I think you gotta own both of them, the mono and the stereo, if you truly love the album, because they both have some good qualities. But when it comes down to it, if you had to pick one, I believe Sgt. Pepper in mono is the way to go. And I would love to know what you think about this. In the comments below, please let me know, do you prefer mono or stereo Sgt. Pepper? And, I'd love to know your arguments. If you do prefer the stereo version of the mix of Sgt. Pepper, please let me know why. And maybe you don't like the mono version. What are some of the things you don't like about the mono version? Other thing I want to say is the packaging of the mono version, to me, is just so much cooler. First of all, they both have the gatefold, but the flaps, the mono flaps right here that all the UK mono pressings had, or sleeves had rather, are just so cool. They'll always be cool to me. They're just a unique feature that, I don't know, every time I open this up and just see them there and feel them, it's just so cool. It's hard to describe. You'll probably understand it if you're a Beatle freak like me. And also the color of the cover is a bit different. It's a little bit of a lighter, like a lighter tint to it, as you can see. I'll put these up closer. This is the mono. This is the stereo. Stereo's got a little bit of a darker color to it. Again, this is of course the 2014 mono remaster, and this is early 70s stereo UK pressing. So, maybe there's a little bit of difference as far as the coloring goes, based off of like an original UK mono and an original UK stereo. But generally speaking, they just have a little bit of a different look to them. Yeah, I don't know. I just felt like making this video because I do get a lot of people asking me, what do you prefer, mono or stereo, and about certain Beatles albums. And I think when it comes to Sgt. Pepper, it really just has to be the mono version for me. And I've given you my reasons, so I'd love to hear some of your thoughts about this topic in the comments below. So let me know, and that's it for now. So hope you're all doing well. It's really rainy out here in California today and probably for the rest of the week. So I'll probably be making a few more videos than I thought I would in the next couple of days. So stay tuned, more videos. Hope you're all doing well. Take care, and bye for now.